Semester 1 review, we do, I do. So I'm going to go through all the topics that we learned in semester 1. I'm going to do the we do side with you, and then you're going to do the I do side on your own. So let's look at number 1. Number 1 says multi-step equations. So it says 7 times n minus 3n equals negative 2 times 14 minus 4n. Solve for n. Okay, remember there was two ways we learned how to do this. First, we learned how to solve it by hand, and then we learned how to check it using our calculator. So let's go ahead and solve this by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line through my equal sign, and then I'm going to simplify both sides. So this 7 is going to distribute inside the parentheses. So I have 7n minus 21n. And then I have this negative 2 that's going to distribute inside the parentheses. So I have negative 28 plus 8n. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to get all my n's onto one side. So right here, notice I have 7n and minus 21n, and then I have an 8n on the other side. So I'm going to subtract 8n, so that cancels. Subtract 8n. And I'm going to go ahead and combine all these like terms on this side. So let's go ahead and get our calculator. So I have 7 minus 21 minus 8. So that gives me negative 22n. And then I have negative 28 on the other side. Okay. Then I need to divide by negative 22. So these cancel on this side, and I'm left with n is equal to, and this should simplify into a fraction or a decimal, so is equal to 1.27. Okay. Remember, we can double check this on our calculator using menu 3.1. So if you use menu 3.1, which is nsolve, if we were to type this whole thing into nsolve, just don't forget to do the comma n at the end. So it would be nsolve 7n minus 3n equals negative 2, 14 minus 4n, comma n. And then that should give you the same answer. Okay. Now let's go ahead and look at number 2. Let's see, number 2. Okay, number 2 is about the topic domain and range. Remember that domain is our x's and range is our y's. So if we're looking at the domain first, so our x's, which is the stuff on the bottom, let's first pay attention to our circles here, so our closed dots. Since they're both closed dots, we know it's going to be less than or equal to for both symbols. And remember, if it was an open dot, so I'm going to write this off to the side, open dot is less than, closed dot is less than or equal to. So if I was to do the domain, notice that this first dot starts right here at the 0, and it ends at 50. So 0 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 50. And then our range from bottom to top starts at 0 and ends at 100. So 0 less than y less than or equal to 100. And that's it. That's our domain and range. Okay, let's look at domain and range again, but in a word problem. So number 3 says the plumber charges a fixed rate of $80 and an additional cost of $45 per hour. The plumber works a max of 8 hours per day. What is the domain and range? So first we need to form an equation here. It says the plumber charges a fixed rate of $80 and an additional cost of $45 per hour. So if we're using the equation y equals mx plus b, our fixed rate is always b, and this per hour part tells us that 45 is our m. So I have y equals 45x plus 80. And then it says the plumber works a max of 8 hours, meaning they could work 0 hours or they could work all the way up to 8 hours. Notice this per hour next to the 45 right here is our x. So that tells us that this part right here is our domain. So for domain, we have 0 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 8. They can work in between any of those hours. And then in order to find our range, we need to plug in 0 and plug in 8 into our x. So I have y is equal to 45 times 0 plus 80. 45 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 80 is 80. So this equals 80. And then I have y equals 45 times 8 plus 80. 45 times 8 plus 80 gives us 440. You can find that on your calculator. So that means our range is 80 less than or equal to y less than or equal to 440. These are our answers. Okay. Now let's look at number 4, which is point slope. It says, what is the equation of the line that passes through -4, 2 and 12, 16? So we have to do 2 steps here. We first have to use the slope formula, then we have to use the point slope formula. So I'm going to go ahead and label my points x1, y1, x2, y2, and then use my slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I'm going to plug in my numbers. So y2 is 6, y1 is 2, so 6 minus 2, x2 is 12, and x1 is -4, so minus a -4. 6 minus 2 is 4. 12 minus a -4 is 16 because of plus a positive. 4 divided by 16 is equal to 1/4. So this is our slope. Now we have to use the point slope formula, y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1, and plug in all our new information. So y minus 2 is equal to 1/4 x minus a -4. So minus a -4 turns into plus a positive, and then we have to distribute this this 1/4 inside the parentheses. So I have y minus 2 is equal to 1/4 x plus 1. And then I add 2 to both sides, and I get y is equal to 1/4 x plus 3. That's my answer. Okay. Let's look at number 5. Number 5 says write linear equations. So we're going to look at this graph, and we're going to write a linear equation. Remember, in order to write a linear equation from a graph, we use the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So the first thing we need to find here is the y-intercept. So if we're looking at this graph, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So right here at -3, that is our b, our y-intercept. And then we need to find our slope. Remember, when finding slope on a graph, we use rise over run. So I'm going to use this point at -3 and this point at 4 to do my slope. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and then to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means my slope is 3/4. So I'm going to write that over here, that m equals 3/4. And then we found b equal to -3. So then we're going to plug in these 2 values m and b into our function. Y is equal to 3 over 4x minus 3. That's our answer. Okay, let's look at number 6. Number 6 says perpendicular lines. So this goes with perpendicular and parallel lines. So before we start, I want to remind you guys that perpendicular, remember the symbol looks like this, stands for opposite reciprocal. And opposite reciprocal just means we change the sign. So change sign, so positive or negative, and then flip the fraction. And then parallel means same slope. Okay, these are just some quick notes just in case you forgot. So let's start the problem. It says, what is the equations that pass through the point 2, negative 2, so this is our x1, y1, and is perpendicular to the line y equals 2/5 x plus 2. So this 2/5 right here is our slope. So in order to find perpendicular to that, remember we change the sign and then we flip it. So that means our perpendicular slope is going to be negative 5 over 2. We change the sign and we flip it. So let's use our point slope formula. Y minus y1 equals m. X minus x1. Remember, this formula is on your star chart, so you do not need to memorize this. So I have y minus negative 2 is equal to negative 5 over 2, x minus 2. So this becomes y plus 2 equals, we distribute this in, negative 5 over 2x plus 5. And then we subtract 2. So I get y is equal to negative 5 over 2x plus 3. That's my answer. Okay. Let's look at number 7, which is rate of change. Remember, rate of change is the same as slope. So same as slope, except with units. Okay. So remember, on a graph, in order to find slope, we use rise over run. So I'm going to use the point here and here. So notice this is going up 1 over 1, but we have to pay attention to the units. So instead of going up 1, it's actually going up 200 because this is going by 200s on the y-axis. And then this one, instead of going over 1, it's actually going over by 0.5. Because notice each of these tick marks here are going up by 0.5. So then we have rise over run, which is 200 over 0.5. If we type this into our calculator, we'll get 400. So 200 divided by 0.5 is 400. And then we just need to pay attention to our units. So rise, remember, is our y's, and our units on our y's are feet squared. So feet squared per, then we look at our x's, which is our run, and then it says gallons. So gallons. So that would be your answer, 400 feet squared per gallon. That means for every gallon, they can cover 400 square feet. Okay. Let's look at number 8. Number 8 is function, not a function. So remember, on function, not a function, we are looking for the x's to not repeat. So x's can't repeat if it is a function. Can't repeat. So let's look at each table and let's look at the x's. So this first one we have 1, 3, 7, 12. None of them repeat, so this is a function. So I'm going to write F for function. Let's look at the next one. We have negative 9, negative 2, 0, 0. The zeros repeat, so that's not a function. The third table we have negative 13, negative 13, negative 13, negative 13. That is not a function since they all repeat. That type of graph is going to look exactly like a vertical line since all the x's are the same. And then we have our last one. We have negative 6, negative 1, negative 1, 10. So the negative ones repeat so that it's not a function. So we only had one table, which is a function, which is the first one, because the x values did not repeat, only the x values. Okay, let's look at number 9. Number 9 is function notation. So remember, in function notation, you are plugging in whatever is inside these parentheses. So for example, this is going to be x, into the x value in our problem. So this one is f of -8 equals 6, 1 minus -8. Notice instead of putting this x, I put -8. Now let's simplify. 1 minus -8, this is plus a positive, so this becomes 6 times 9, because 1 plus 8 is 9, and then 6 times 9 is 54. So our answer is 54. That's it. You're just plugging in whatever's inside the parentheses in for x every single time. Okay, let's look at 10, literal equations. So remember, in literal equations, you're trying to get one of the variables by itself. So in this case, it wants us to solve for y. So in order to get y by itself, let's look at this problem here. In order to get y by itself, we have to first get rid of this 3x. And we can get rid of that 3x by subtracting 3x to both sides. So then we have -4y is equal to -3x plus 6. Notice I did not combine -3x and 6 because they are not like terms. One of them is x and one of them is just a number. Also notice that I put my x in the front because my goal is to put it in the form y equals mx plus b, and x comes first. Okay, so my last step to get y by itself is divide by -4. So I'm going to divide everything by -4. So these ones cancel and I'm left with y equals -3 divided by -4 is just 3 over 4. The negatives just turned into a positive, so 3 over 4x. And then 6 divided by -4, if you do that in your calculator, is going to be -3 over 2. So that's my answer. For pre-AP, so off to the side, if you're in my pre-AP class, for pre-AP, let's look at this and see how we could turn that into standard form. So remember, standard form, ax plus by equals c. So x and y need to be on the same side. So if we have y equals 3 over 4x minus 3 over 2, we first have to multiply the whole equation by one number. And that one number is going to be whatever the common denominator is between the two. So the common denominator between the two is going to be 4. So I'm going to multiply everything by 4. So I have 4y equals 3x minus 6. Okay, then I want to get my x and y's on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 3x. And I get -3x plus 4y is equal to -6. Okay, so that's how it would look in standard form. If you notice back at the original problem over here, it's very similar to what they got up here, except they multiplied everything by -1. So we got 3x minus 4y equals 6. Okay, this is just a second note for my pre-AP class. Okay, let's look at number 11. Graphing linear inequalities. So we have y is greater than 3x minus 4. So we learned how to do this two ways. We could either graph it by hand or use our calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this by hand because I don't have my calculator out, but on the side I'm going to write the calculator steps. So I have y is greater than 3x minus 1. Since I have greater than or less than, I know it's going to be a dotted line. If I have greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, I know it's going to be a solid line. So first, I'm going to graph my y-intercept. So if we have y equals mx plus b, I'm going to graph this one, so -4. So -4 is here. And then my slope, 3, is the same as writing 3 over 1. So up 3, right 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, and then since it is greater than, I know it's a dotted line. And then greater than means it's shaded up. Okay, so you could have got the same thing by doing this on your calculator. So let me write this off to the side. Calculator. Go to Add Graphs. Hit Delete 6. Type your equation. Remember to get the inequality symbol. So inequality symbol, that is control equal. Then you just graph the equation and it will show you automatically what the answer is. Okay, let's look at number 12. Number 12 says inequalities. So what was important about these is that if we multiply or divide by a negative number, our sign flips. So we need to remember that while we're solving this problem. So I have negative 4x plus 10 greater than or equal to 5x plus 55. So let's go ahead and solve this problem. Remember, in order to solve this problem, I need all my x's on one side and all my numbers on the other. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5x over here and then subtract 10 over here. So negative 4x minus 5x is negative 9x. 10 minus 10 cancels. 5x minus 5x cancels. 55 minus 10 is 45. Divide by negative 9. I get x is less than or equal to negative 5. Because since I divided by that negative 9 right here, this original symbol now flipped. Okay, now I need to graph it on my number line. So I have negative 5. Since this is a less than or equal to symbol, it's going to be a closed dot. And since it's less than, it's everything smaller. So everything smaller than negative 5 would be this way. Everything smaller because negative 6, negative 4. Okay. Now let's look at 13. 13 is radicals. So remember, when solving radicals, we use the factor tree. And when we use the factor tree, we use these prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. So let's look at our 147 here. The prime number that can go into 147 is 3. It can go into 147 49 times. The prime number that can go into 49 is 7, and it goes in 7 times. So once I do my factor tree, I find my pairs. So I have a pair of 7s. So I'm going to have 7 on the outside and 3 on the inside, since 3 does not have a pair. However, since I have it at 4 on the outside, I need to multiply my outside number by 4. So 4 times 7 is 28, square roots of 3. That would be my answer. Okay, let's look at 14. 14 is the properties of exponents. So in this case, for properties of exponents, we are dividing. And when we divide common bases, that means we subtract the exponents. So let's first simplify our coefficient. We have 45 divided by 15. 45 divided by 15 is 3, but I'm going to write that as 3 over 1. And then I have my m's. So I have m to the negative 6 minus negative 2. That's plus a positive, so this is m to the negative 4. Since it's negative, it's going to go on the bottom and turn positive, so m to the 4. Then I have p to the 2 minus 8, which is p to the negative 6. Since negative 6 is negative, it's going to go on the bottom and turn positive. And then I have v to the 12 minus negative 4. That turns into plus a positive, so this is v to the 16. V to the 16 is positive, so it's going to go on top. So that's my answer. Just remember, when we are dividing same bases, we subtract exponents. Very important. One of the rules. Remember, these rules are all on your star chart. Okay, let's look at 15. Oops. 15, again, properties of exponents. It says the area of a rectangle. Remember, area of a rectangle is area equals length times width. Is 54 x to the 9th y to the 8th. So 54 x to the 9th y to the 8th equals, because that's our area. If the length is 6x squared y3, what is the width? So we need to find width. So in order to find width, in order to get w by itself, we need to divide both sides by 6x squared y to the 3rd. Notice once we divide, this side cancels and we're only left with this side. And this side looks like the problem we did in 14. So if we simplify the coefficients, 54 divided by 6 is 9. So let's go equals 9. And then I subtract my exponents. X to the 9th minus 2 is equal to x to the 7th. Y to the 8 minus 3 is equal to y to the 5. They're both positive, so they both remain on top. So x to the 7th, y to the 5. That's my answer. So again, we are subtracting exponents. Okay, last question. I know it's not on your paper because I forgot to write it, but go ahead and write number 16, systems of equations. So systems of equations here, I have 2x plus y equals 6 and x minus y equals 2. So we learned how to solve this two ways, by graphing and by using menu 3-2 on the calculator. So if we solve it by graphing,